in addition to the disparity of the type of player that we're seeing between the two teams, obviously coaches try to find that magic formula for preparing a team that hasn't set foot on a field in anger for fill in the blank, 35, 40 days, whatever it's been. So it's Chris Peterson and what he's known for, you just alluded to, the gadget play, lifting the Boise State program to national relevance. And then you got Nick Saban, who's the gold standard. So it was funny when you started to mention the scene that you saw with Washington coming off the plane and Alabama coming off the plane. Well, if we didn't have a track record to go by, I wouldn't be able to tell you which was the better approach. But considering that Alabama's done this over and over and over, and with the success rate that they've had, I'm guessing that's the right approach. So when you talk about a coaching approach, Urban Meyer, Nick Saban, there's the comparison of modern day great coaches, with Saban being one, and you would have to say based on success, Urban either 2 or 1A, however you want to phrase it. But Nick Saban certainly has that distinction. And I heard Urban Meyer talking about today, trying to take a little bit from each season in regards to what worked, what didn't work in preparing teams. And he's 10-2 in bowl play. And he talked about like really going through the grind and really stuffing these players' heads with stuff, but then getting to a point where, hey, let's back off. Let's let them actually relax. Let them get away a little bit. Forget about football. That 48 hours leading into the game being key. Are there some things that you picked up, Chris Peterson versus Nick Saban?
Well, I think Saban's kind of had that same thing. He's, after that first year, I think he learned a lot that first year. He knew that he has to give them a break. But that's what Chris Peterson said today. He said he hasn't used all the allotted practices that they've been given by the NCAA. He's decided to not use them all. Use, I think, 10 practices total to try to give them a break. He said, "Listen, we know they've learned as much as they can. They know what's going on at this point. It's just trying to get to this next game." I think Nick Saban knows he has to give players a rest and can't push them. But on the flip side, I think when he's out of practice, he's getting after him and he's making those practices count. I mean, he's not saying, "All right, let's get out here and practice, go through some plays, go through the motions, let's just stretch, whatever else." He's getting after him, and he was coaching as hard in the practices this week inside the Georgia Dome as you would see in August. I mean, that's what you saw out of him in the intensity on the field with his players. So he might know how to balance it a little bit more, and he knows to give them that break. But I think when they're back on the field or back in Tuscaloosa early last week, he knows he's got to make them work, and they have to be focused on the next game. So, that he learned that. I think he didn't have a great feel that first year against Ohio State, which isn't the reason they lost, but it's just something he carried over to the next year. Hey, what can we do differently going back in to make it better for our team? And it's tough. I mean, nobody had the answer. That was the thing. I mean, that was the first year it's ever happened in the sport. So they're trying to figure it out. Now they've had the benefit, Alabama, and this being the third year they're going through it. So that's a huge boost and a huge advantage for them in this game over whoever they're playing. Even with Clemson and Ohio State both having experience, nobody's done it as much as Alabama, and I think these guys are very comfortable in that position.
So the historical perspective question always comes into play at this point in the season concerning Alabama and Nick Saban. And if you take the slice of 4 years going back, it has a bit of a different theme, but they are all fairly similar. So close. You brought up 2014, Ben. That would be the one exception to where Alabama since 2009 has not gotten to this point and closed the deal. Every other time they closed the deal, they got it done, whether it was the BCS era or last year in the playoff. But there was always, if you wanted to be a complete Alabama detractor, you had some way to tarnish their accomplishment, to say, oh, Oklahoma State should have been there in 2011 instead of LSU. They didn't even win the SEC Western Division. Or 2012, well, Ohio State was undefeated. They wouldn't have made it. It would have been Ohio State, Notre Dame, or whatever. There was usually a knock. They lost a game in 2014. They needed some help from Ole Miss in losing down the stretch to make it to Atlanta to then advance. But this team, if they complete the deal the way it's expected, there will be just absolutely no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, this is a team that will cement its legacy. I mean, you'll have a couple of things, Mark. You'll have Nick Saban's only his second undefeated team. You would potentially have the only the first 15-0 team in NCAA FBS history, which is a huge accomplishment. And then, as we were talking about earlier, before we got on, 51 total wins is what Alabama, the senior class, has the chance to play for on Saturday. Now, they could make it 52 if they went out, but 51 wins over a 4-year period has never happened before. So, I try to, and this is one thing that I try to fight personally, is trying to balance talking about the present and backing out and seeing the big picture more on everything. Because, look, we all know we're seeing an unprecedented era of college football, but I think it's even better and even greater, I think, than what most people are giving it credit for, and we will eventually when we look back on it. But you just look at every area. I mean, any record and stat that you're looking at, Alabama is pushing it and breaking it. I mean, that's where they are right now, and this is just another year. I mean, it would be incredible to go 15-0, to have a defense that's being considered the greatest of all time. You just wonder how Nick Saban can keep doing it, because they lose a bunch of players, and I know he's got a ton of players behind him, but this guy does it with a true freshman quarterback now. If he can bring in a true freshman quarterback and plug him in and win a championship and go undefeated, what hope is there for the rest of college football? I mean, look, Jalen Hurts is a different guy. He's a different cat. He's incredibly humble, talented, coaching son, like whatever else. But to be able to plug in a guy like that and then not have a running back that has experience to match that, I mean, to take the pressure off. It's been a unique year, and it might be. Well, it's hard to say his best coaching job because the defense is so good that it carries the offense at times. But if you can go through this season undefeated with what you started with on the offensive side of the ball and the uncertainties, and even the offensive line, Mark, I mean that's been they've mixed so many different players on that offensive line and tried so many different combinations. The only thing that's been consistent is the outside, the wide receivers. But besides that, you didn't know who the quarterback was going to be, who the starting running back would be. Everybody was talking about Bo Scarborough. Well, he's been injured and hadn't played a ton. He's been kind of a backup, but, you're talking about him almost pushing back to the third string. So you didn't know who was going to be there, who would be at quarterback. So they overcome all that and to still be in position right now to be a heavy favorite in the playoff. It's pretty fascinating to follow and to watch.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate,
Do it,
Ben, because this is my job. It's
just
my job. It's nothing personal. So they would have the win total record at 51 for 4 years. Ohio State, as you mentioned, 50 in 2015, the 2015 class. But that 2015 class at Ohio State only lost 4 games, and Alabama's lost 5 by my count in the last 4 years.
Maybe. I mean, I'm going to take your word, Mark, because
that's what it is.
You know your numbers. But I think it was the 14 class. Was it not the 14 class for Ohio State?
No, it was the 15 class because Urban came in 2012. So here's the deal. This is what happened.
The 14 class and the 15 class for Alabama was 50. That's what I thought.
So let's match up the 2012 freshman classes for these two schools, because Alabama, I'm not going to knock them off the gold standard because that's where they firmly are. But Ohio State would be the one challenger historically and right this second right now.
Sure.
2012, Alabama wins the national championship. They lost one game, right? Johnny Manziel. That's right. Ohio State went 12-0. It was Urban's first year. They had no chance to do anything. They were under probation for the 1 year. 2013, Alabama him out of the national championship. In similar fashion, Ohio State loses a Big Ten championship game, so they both came within that much, and they get knocked out. Similar seasons. 2014, they meet in the Sugar Bowl. Ohio State wins it. They march on to the national championship game. Here's the one distinction I'm going to make, Ben. And, of course, I'm probably the only person around who's going to make this distinction. In 2015, sure, Alabama, I give them all the credit in the world, just like 2011, for closing the deal when given the opportunity. But they only had that opportunity because Ole Miss lost a 1-point overtime game at Arkansas in which Hunter Henry threw the ball over his head 25 yards, if you remember the play, and miraculously beat Ole Miss. Otherwise, Ole Miss, despite losing other games, gets to the SEC championship game. And Alabama shut out.
Knock Alabama out of the playoff.
But the comparison I'm going to make is Ohio State did not make the playoff last year, and I don't believe that they should have. They didn't earn it. But we all know that they were one of the 4 best teams last year. Michigan State was not. But basically, they had the same regular season. Alabama just had the fortunate place to defeat a team that went out and lost another game that let them back in, where Ohio State lost the worst possible game it could because that team did not give them an opportunity. They both went 11-1. They both lost to really good top 10 teams, but Ole Miss gave Alabama the opportunity. Michigan State did not.
Mark, when you're God's team, you catch the breaks. I mean, it's as simple as that. I don't really know what else to tell you.
I do the best I
can.
No,
but listen, hey, look, these two teams, and I think that's one reason why I'd like to see Alabama and Ohio State play again if both teams could win on Saturday, as I'd love to see those teams square off, because you're right. They have been the two, not even looking at just Ohio State, Alabama, but Urban Meyer and Nick Saban. Both of those programs and those coaches have been two of the best over the last 15, 20 years. Not so much Alabama over a 20-year period, but more 15. But you know what I'm saying? These two programs, to see them actually square off head-to-head for a championship would be pretty awesome.
Yeah, it would be cool. Now, for people that just want to see matchups on the field exclusively, they're looking at what Deshaun Watson was able to accomplish against Alabama last year and want to see him get another shot from that standpoint. Yeah,
and I think that would actually be a better matchup or a more difficult matchup for Alabama, a better game, I think, for the championship. Just because I think Clemson's playing. I think they're trending different directions right now, but you know, I think Urban Meyer will have them ready, and Ohio State's got the talent, no question about that. If they put it together one night, they can definitely win a game. So I'd like to see that matchup more so for the historical value and just because of the storylines. But I'd rather see the Clemson-Alabama matchup more for the competition and to see Deshaun Watson go against Alabama again.
I don't know if you've seen this stat, Ben, but it's pretty remarkable. Ohio State is the youngest team in FBS football.
Yeah, that's amazing. They got a bright future ahead of them up there in Columbus, Mark. No question.
Yeah, I think if they keep things together and this Urban guy, kind of works his process, that he may have good things in the future in store. Ben, we like to call this Mark Rogers TV the Alabama edition.
Ooh, I like the sound of that. Beautiful.
All right, Ben George from 102.9, Tide 102.9. Ben, we can't do this without you. You bring the insight like no other.
Hey, Mark, have a happy new year. Enjoy your Saturday watching that game, and we'll catch you in 2017.